The order of the regular city council meeting of January 25th, 2018. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let the roll call show that everyone is present. We'll move on to the approval of minutes from June 11th, 2018. Councilmember Parisian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple things. Page 1, it's going to be the motion to approve the minutes as amended. Approve is going to need another P. Let's see. I think that's all I had.
Councilmember Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of corrections that I would like to make here on public comments that were made by the president of our Historical Society, Linda Ross, and commissioner of the Housing Commission, or the Historical Commission, Mr. Jim Race. Both of these are with their approval. Where in the last few lines of page 1, Ms. Ross talked about the old cemetery in Washtenaw County. It reads dedicated to an old cemetery. Well, correctly, the name of the cemetery is capital OLDS after the man's name. Okay, and I brought along a newspaper article from the Current paper. I'm going to pass this on down to Glenn. It'll go to Lisa, and she can refer to that in official records. On page 2, okay, where Jim Race stated, okay, of the Housing Commission, he remembered that he's a member of the Historical Commission, replacing Roger Heupel, and his address is 996 Hearthsing, not Hagedorn. Okay, he made sure we corrected that. Again, it's 996 maybe it's Hearthside. Okay, Jim Race. It's his correct address. I guess that's probably it. Okay, thank you very much.
Anyone else have anything for the June 11th minutes?
I'll move the minutes as amended.
I'll second. Oh, go ahead, Rose.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. At this point, we'll move on to the approval of the bills. These are the attorney bills from last meeting. Councilmember Kurtzwell.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. The only comment I'm going to make on the attorney fees is thank you very much, Tim, for some really hard work regarding the personnel matters that we were dealing with during the winter. And I think once again, I'm going to encourage council to consider having a human resource individual, even if it's for part-time, working here in the city. I think that's probably a more professional approach to dealing with personnel matters. We really don't have anybody now that is capable of handling labor and personnel matters, and it's constantly requiring the assistance of the city attorney. So I think a good part-time human resource, that's a good start. I think we're big enough that we can absorb it, and I'd like council to take a look at it when the new city manager comes on board. Other than that, thank you, Tim, for all your hard work.
You're welcome. I move the bills. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Approval of tonight's agenda.
I'll move the agenda.
I'll support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. At this point, we're going to open up for public comment, and this is something I should have done last week, but I am going to take this opportunity to read the new statement on the back of the council agenda, so everyone's on the same page with this. And I'll try and do this every week, and if we don't see anyone else come in, I won't redo it before the second public comment. Rules for conduct for public comment at council meetings. Members of the public may speak at council meeting upon recognition of the mayor. Public comment may only occur during periods designated on the agenda for public comment or a public hearing. A person may speak for up to 2 minutes during each of the 2 public comment periods on agenda items or non-agenda items. Waivers of the time requirement may only be granted in the discretion of the mayor, and waivers to speak at a time other than the designated comment period may only be granted by the council. Any person wishing to make a presentation longer than 2 minutes or requiring audiovisual equipment is asked to please contact the city clerk requesting to appear on a future agenda. A person may only address council from the podium. Only one person may occupy the podium at a time. All remarks are to be directed to the mayor and council. Speakers are not to engage in direct dialogue with other meeting attendees. Any person who violates the rules of conduct, disturbs the peace at the meeting, and/or interferes with the meeting may be warned, ordered to be seated, removed, or ticketed. This summarizes Council Resolution 04-18. Complete rules, including guidelines for considering waivers, are available in the City Council chambers and from the City Clerk. So thank you. At this time, if we have anyone for public comment, please state your name and address. All right. We'll move forward to our discussion with downtown and Mr. Donahue.
All right. Again, everybody has a copy of the report. A couple items. The first item, discussions with building owners. Things are going along nicely with 6 of the building projects. It's exciting to see them move along. I was just notified last week that there are 3 currently occupied buildings that are occupied by office or service. And I'm not at liberty to say who, but it's very exciting because I think finally we can have space for a restaurant. And so we're hoping over the next 3 to 6 months to have 3 additional spaces for retail restaurant downtown in the core. Also today I received approval down at the bottom. Received approval from the Road Commission of Oakland County to place 3 at 3 different locations large white rectangles in the crosswalks. We've had typically just 2 4-inch stripes, whereas most cities have gone to the large rectangles. It's better for traffic calming. It's much better for pedestrian safety. So I'm going to get with Lloyd to go through that with Lloyd and the DPW, because additionally the DDA approved buying 6 yield to pedestrian signs that will be in the roadway, and Lloyd and I will work on the placement. So we think we are significantly improving all of our pedestrian crossings on Lafayette, particularly at Whipple, and Liberty, and then the Wells Street lot. And as we can afford to, we'll do more. Yes.
Councilmember Kurtzwell, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are you aware of, and this is what, I'm not saying it concerns me, but I think it's sort of important to get it out there. Are you aware of the development that is going around South Lyon?
Yes.
Are you aware of the $50 million Asian village coming into Novi?
I was talking to Oakland County, yes.
That's huge.
Yes.
$50 million for Asians. It's predominantly individuals from Japan. And the Novi mayor said in the article that he is embracing diversity, prides itself on the many things, one of which is our celebration of diversity. And Asian Americans make up more than 21% of Novi's population. And that's only 15 minutes away from South Lyon. So from a demographic standpoint, I would say that Asian Americans are definitely a demographic group that we should take a look at when we are, looking at retail in our town, looking at opportunities. I really love Asian food, so I can imagine the restaurants that are going to be there.
Yeah.
This is actually a mixed use. It's going to be commercial and residential housing, and I believe it's going to have cultural events in it too. But this is absolutely huge for Novi, and they're just down the road from us.
No,
and I'm
exciting.
saying, and why are we struggling here with getting a developer to come in and, you know, I mean, I just don't know. I don't have the answers, but I see something like this, and and then I came across the article of the development. Are you familiar with? You're from Commerce Township.
Yes.
Are you familiar with that new development? $100 million downtown district for Commerce Township, 2020, fall 2020.
I have, as a
That's-
resident of Commerce Township and a downtown development person for 40 years, I'm very upset with my township because that's not a downtown. We have a real downtown.
It's a 60-acre development site. It's going to include residential, luxury, senior housing, retail, $100 million. All downtown, all walkable, all Main Street.
I wish them well, but I've seen the plan and I'm not impressed at all. But as a Commerce Township resident, I guess I can have that opinion.
But I'm just saying, there's
Oh,
money
development is all around us.
is all around
Right.
us, and I'm saying, you know, where's our
Well,
opportunities?
we're very small. We're
Commerce
pretty much
Township.
landlocked. And so literally that's one of our issues. And we literally do not have a place yet for the restaurants we want. So it's a matter of size. You know, we have to work with existing. But the developers are prowling around. I know there are developers approaching property owners on North Lafayette. And I've personally handed copies of the master plan to 4 different developers. And I know 2 of those are active. And we're just very close to a lot of things. Very close.
I hope
And
we- Hope we get our piece of the pie.
we will. We will.
Councilmember Kibble?
We've had conversations too, and some of the discussions that you've had with some of these developers, they're raising some very innovative questions about ways to solve some of the land use issues that they're running against. So I can't help but think that we're going to find success before long. So
They've discovered us. Also, Oakland County, I had a jump drive and I've had it copied. Our market analysis has been a great thing for developers and restaurant people. And I am in conversations right now with 2 different parties for the Draft Street building. There's an offer in. Environmental issues are being looked at because there's pollution on 3 sides of the Draft Street. So we're looking at all that. But
There was someone there yesterday looking at it.
I was there. I came in on Sunday.
Okay.
Maybe it was just my intuition told me to be there, and I saw them walking around
Yeah.
the building, so then we had an hour meeting.
Okay.
Great.
It's crazy.
I'd like to say something.
Councilmember Richards, go ahead.
Bob, on the north end of Lafayette Street, okay, where we've got all the vacancies up by Salvation Army, as I understand that somebody else is committed to occupying one of the spots here just in the last 2 weeks.
That's right.
Do you know about that?
No, actually the owner's secretary told me about it. I've been trying to nail a meeting with the owner who's Birmingham. His business offices are in Birmingham because quite a few businesses are expressing a desire to switch from the by Bushes to the north end for different reasons.
Well, that used to be a thriving place once upon a time, and it's been a ghost town for the last 8 years or more.
There are
you know.
5 spaces available in there. Now with one, there'll be 4.
I would hope we could fill that place up, and look at all the money they put into the joint, okay? And it's still, you could play field hockey in the parking lot without hitting a car, you know? Too bad.
The growth is really surprisingly in retail and not in office. And service industry's got a lot of growth, but office is pretty stagnant right now.
Well, look, what do you think's the problem with that particular location? You got any ideas? All new buildings.
Visibility is a little bit of a problem, but I'm not sure.
Okay, good enough.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay, thank you.
We'll move on to old business. Consideration of council meeting conduct and council rules and procedures. This was postponed from the January 22nd, 2018 meeting. There's a lot to digest here. So if anyone's, Tim, do you want to get us started? Thanks.
So there is quite a bit of information here. I've been working with Matt Zaleski in my office, who prepared the public comment rules, and we've talked about maybe how to approach this, but really we're looking for input from council on how do you want to go about this? Do you want us to take a crack at it? Is a special meeting in order to try and identify concepts and details, what you like, what you don't like, and some of the samples? Do you want to do this in a much longer term project where you say, let's concentrate on this concept and finish that part with the intent of maybe putting together multiple resolutions or sets of rules that all fit together in an overall set of rules and procedures for the council? We also talked about how many communities use these rules and procedures to pull together regulations or requirements or things in your charter, your ordinances, state law, for example. One of the things that I think would be helpful for South Lyon is to make more clear about who sets the agenda, how you as council members get things on the agenda, the timing of that, which has been established for quite some time, when your meetings are, how do you call a special meeting, who can call a special meeting, those types of things. Those are typically, some of that is resolved by state law, some is by your charter, and there's a number of things where this set of rules could be a way to pull that all together and be an easy to use, all in one place, use almost as an orientation for any new council member that might be elected. So there's a lot here. There's a ton of things you can do. You don't have to do these things. And we're really just looking for some feedback on how you want to go about this and get a plan.
Yeah, all right. Councilmember Kurtzwell?
I'm just going to provide some general comments as to who gets things on the agenda or what comes before council. I'm clearly not in favor of agenda items being set solely by the city manager. I think as an elected official, residents come to me with issues that they would like to see discussed or brought up or at least debated. And I really don't think that it's fair to the voters that the city manager ultimately controls what the voters are to hear, listen, how things are resolved. I have a personal experience with the interim city manager where I submitted a letter on March 5th to be submitted to city council. It was asked to be included with the packet, and it never got included. So you had an interim city manager who was deciding what council was going to see and what council wasn't going to see. And I'm just not in favor of any administrator censoring what I'm going to read and what I'm not going to read. I will decide whether or not that information is appropriate. I don't need a city manager telling me what I can and cannot read. I don't care whether it comes from a member of city council or whether it comes from somebody in the public. So I think that if the council has an issue and they want it on the agenda, I think they have a right to get it on the agenda. And if council doesn't want to hear it, you follow Robert's Rules of Order. If you don't have a motion that's been seconded to deal with the issue, the motion fails and the matter goes away. But at least you've provided the opportunity for the voice to be heard. I mean, to me, that's a real far left tactic when you don't include information that is provided to you. I don't care what your opinion is of it. It wasn't your decision to decide. Council is old enough that they can read stuff and decide whether or not they want to listen to it. That's what I do. I throw stuff here and I throw stuff there. I'm old enough I can make up my own mind. So I'm going to oppose any effort to solely allow the city manager to control the agenda. I don't think that's responsive to the public or to my duties as an elected official. Additionally, on some of this we're already doing. It's on page 3, the order of speaking. The mayor's doing an excellent job. He's following Robert's Rules of Order. Robert's Rules of Order say, you make a motion, you start debate. Each and every one of us on this council have been very respectful of the mayor They have raised their hands. They have waited to be acknowledged by the mayor. The mayor is very good at making sure that no one person dominates, that everybody has an opportunity for a first round of speaking, and then he goes back, and you only have 6 people up here, for Pete's sake. It's not that difficult to keep track of who's speaking. He does an excellent job of doing that. So I think the style that this mayor has is in conformance with Robert's rules. It seems to be working very well. And I don't know if I would play around with it too much. Additionally, with respect to Robert's rules, I personally like Robert's rules. I am organizations where Robert's rules is used. Robert's rules is part of our agenda here. And the reason I like Robert's rules is because they're fair. They're time-tested. You start playing around with the rules and saying, well, council will do this and council will do that. That tells me that the political wins on council will determine what the minority on council will say and what they won't say. And I'm not in favor of controlling what people say up here. I don't agree with half of what goes on up here, but I'm not interested in controlling what they say. They want to sit up here and say what they want to say, let them say it. So that's why I like Robert's rules, is because Robert's rules has a protection in there for the minority. And so I'm not in favor of playing around too much with Robert's rules, because we're using them and we're learning them as we go. And for those that don't know Robert's rules, I know a couple of members have said they don't know them or haven't read them, whatever. Amazon sells a very simple copy. It's called, Robert's Rules for Dummies. It's cheap. They're not that hard. It's common sense. So I think until I really see where there's a difficulty here on council, I don't know if I'm real interested in changing things. Because I think the mayor, quite frankly, is doing a pretty good job. That's my 2 cents.
I would ask a question, though, and I appreciate the kind words. Would you consider putting a time limit on the agenda where we would not introduce any new business at a certain time, say 11 o'clock?
I don't have a problem with that.
Or something like that. Like, I'm following you on what you're saying about the meat and potatoes of it, but there's some outlying things that maybe we could do that would help not just make the meetings a little bit more efficient, but, some of us have got to get going again the next day, all of us, those late night ones can be a little rough. That's what was at least looking at on this. I didn't know if anyone else had any feedback on that. I'm following you. Go ahead, Councilmember Kurtzwell. I directed you, so go
May
ahead.
I speak, Mr.
Yes.
Mayor? Okay. Because I'm speaking out of order. So
I know,
just
that's all
wanna-
right. I asked you if you'd entertain
Okay,
it, so.
all right. The one way to solve that is to do what Lyon Township does. They go with a consent agenda for many of their items. I mean, some of their meetings must have 25, 30 items a night when they meet. And they go and they use a consent agenda. Maybe you could call John Dolan. I think I would have you call rather than Lloyd call. And Lisa Deaton, maybe the two of you go over and sort of meet with them and sort of talk about consent agendas, because you can probably do away with probably half your agenda through a consent agenda item, and it's used very formally by a lot of municipalities. We don't do it here. I don't know why, but I think I would explore that as an option. But I do think also, in all fairness to Your Honor, the mayor, is that we are elected officials, and the public does expect us to be here.
Yep.
And no one said it was going to be an easy job, and nobody said it was going to be an early job.
Nope.
I remember the days when council left at 9 o'clock and went down to the local watering hole and stayed there till midnight. So, it's a little different now. I think it's a little bit more of a careful council in terms of how we deliberate and how we present our arguments and positions. And we give a little bit more time to debate rather than looking to hit the watering hole, because last call is usually at 9:30 or 9:45 on a Monday night. But I would agree with the mayor that I think there are ways. I think, why don't we try a consent judgment the next time? Consent judgment, in fact, could have been used on some of the lengthy agendas that we had in the past couple months. and you would have been out of here probably an hour early.
All right, thank you.
Tim, you might have some input on consent agendas that are used in other municipalities?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, many communities use a consent agenda. It is a way to, as Councilmember Kurzweil points out, a way to streamline you package all of these and you say, these are the consent agenda, you do one vote and they're all approved through one vote. And there's usually a safety valve mechanism where any council member can pull something off of the consent agenda and make it a new business item or old business, depending on what it is, so that there's certainly a way. And to put context behind this, all of Councilmember Kurzweil's comments are well taken. As you have seen with Matt's product and the substance of it, we would be looking at all of the safety valve type concepts to avoid one person having complete control over an issue. There's usually, if you had an ending time, no new business after a certain time, there has to be a mechanism to agree to go beyond that.
Right.
But it would be by council's choice. To deviate from your rule that you've already set as a council. So with all of these, the concepts that are being talked about, we will, ultimately, I think we're going to be the drafters and look at providing you with, hey, this might be a problem, here's how the safety valve or the mechanism to get around that issue. But coming back to the consent agenda, I have my own feelings about why this community doesn't use them. I think your agendas, looking back and having gone back and been forced to look through some of your past packets, I think it was just a product of the agendas not being terribly long to begin with, and a desire by council to just go through these things. So I think that's something that I think you should consider.
Okay.
There are a lot of routine things that you don't need to get into the details of, where if you just have the packet information and know that it's going to be approved, that should be enough for you. But
Councilmember Kivel, one moment. Chief Collins, you had something?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a point of clarification. That 6-page letter that was submitted by the council member that commented on it did concern me. However, I did not impose my personal opinion or even my personal judgment, although it was against my personal judgment that there could be an issue with that letter. Before making a decision on that, I did consult with the city attorney. The city attorney opined that that document could contain libelous statements that could put the city at jeopardy, and that is why it was not included in the packet for publication.
Thank you, Chief. Councilmember Kurzweil, I know it's killing you to not be able to respond to that, but I'm going to ask you to respond to that in your council comments.
Okay, I will.
Thank you. Councilmember Kivel, back to our discussion.
Yeah, the problem that we have here is never a product of these incidental things. The idea of the things that would end up being in the consent decision would never be the things that are keeping us here for hours more than what was necessary. It's from someone having yet one more thing to go on to say over and over in 15 different versions of getting the same message across. So, I mean, brevity and succinctness would end up being a lot more valuable than worrying about a consent approval of agenda items. And personally, I don't have a misgiving completely about the idea of having a time limit, but it would clearly need to be a judgment of the importance of whatever the remaining issues were. So, and that would end up having to be something that we could forecast, as far as I'm concerned. When you look at what business items are going to be attended to on that meeting, I would like to put the more unimportant things at the end of the meeting in the event that we were looking at a long agenda for time. So, and I don't want any more rules on us than what's absolutely necessary. But Roberts is a vehicle that, I mean, save for the fact of allowing everyone to have their say prior to someone talking again, on a particular segment of the discussion. A lot of the other stuff is these nuanced kind of vehicles to kind of push your way in to get to talk again. I'd like to just have some civil discussion without all the vitriol going on, the examples of what happened in the past and, you know, why that was the wrong way to go, which more often than not, I can guarantee you the summary of what led into that doesn't describe all the factors that were taken into consideration when that decision was made. If it were an honest effort to try to describe what had taken place in the past, I think that those could actually be vehicles that could inform your new position on making sure that you're working in the right direction. But I think if we could leave all that stuff in the past, convince us with an argument, a concise argument that makes sense, that's compelling, and clearly demonstrates this is the path that we need to be taking. So, thank you.
Well, I don't know if anyone has anything else to add, but I have no problem trying to give Tim and Matt, who did a fantastic job on helping us put together the public comment piece, on at least coming back with us with some sort of framework, if you guys would be interested in that. I mean, and then we could even maybe critique them on what we think would actually help us most.
That's a good starting point. Yes.
Councilmember Kennedy?
I think as Tim mentioned, I think there are advantages to having all the information in one location so that, as was mentioned, newly elected officials have it there for reference and so forth. Because Robert's Rules of Order, all good, in some cases are designed for far larger bodies than the 6-7 people sitting up here.
Correct.
Okay? There are certain portions that do apply and apply very well here. We could certainly ferret those out, put those in one document for reference, and basically use that to better govern the way this body operates.
Well, and there's something to be said about having it all in one place, too, for our newly elected officials going forward, or anyone who's new to the city, actually, for that matter. So, no, does anyone else have anything before I go back to Councilmember Kivel? Go ahead, Glenn.
I did want to point out two things. First off, that if you look at the back of this little section, the resolution that it describes here, the point number 2, it speaks to public comments. Well, that was just an error in Julia transcribed it improperly, because clearly if you look at the last page, the original document, all of this stuff was pertinent to council comments, not public comments. So all of this stuff is addressing, all of this document was addressing points that we needed to take into consideration. And as far as getting something on the agenda, I don't like the idea of someone being able to just, a single person throwing something on the agenda. If it comes up late, I mean, much like that reference that I just made, I mean, if you get somebody to support the amendment of the agenda, then, you know, I mean, you're moving in the right direction. If it's an action kind of a thing, then you need a supermajority. So I think that those are reasonable kind of things to have on there. And if it's a forecastable type of an item, get support from someone else on council, and then it's really a no-brainer that, you know, that it's a viable discussion to have. I don't know, it's just, I know that in the past we've had an awful lot of what I thought were frivolous little items on the agenda that seemed to go on for an awful long time and really never ended up doing anything except for try to beat up on people that were the subject of their discussion.
Tim, do you need some more direction from us?
Well, let me,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Mayor, if I may. We certainly would like more input, but we're certainly willing to, if the direction from council is to try and put something together, we can do that.
And then we can
Matt and I did talk about that as a possibility.
And then we can be very critical when you come back to us. No, I'm teasing.
Well, I guess the concern would be, is that the most efficient use of our time unless we have something to start from?
Right.
And we've started to see that conversation, and perhaps, there's a way to get some more information from individual council members about, as we pull this together. And without more direction about the scope, I don't know that I have a time frame off the cuff on when this would be brought back. And maybe we reach the conclusion that maybe just bring this back right away, or bring this back first, bring back this back second, whatever. So we'll figure out a way to bring this forward with something we've prepared that you can take a look at.
Okay. Councilmember Parisian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Attorney Wilhelm, I have no reservations with you coming up with a plan for us, you and Matt. I wouldn't mind if you went really broad with it. If you cast a wide net and just kind of hit whatever issues you think are pertinent to council, that would benefit us. And then we can kind of tweak it down from there. But if you went broad with it, I think that would cover most issues that you see with council, and whether it's time restrictions or whether it's organization, whatever it might be. Cast a broad net, come back to us whenever you're ready, and we can whittle it down if we need to. Thank you.
Councilmember Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tim, speaking as a former citizen activist, before I was ever elected, there was a number of times I wanted to get something on the agenda. Sometimes, a couple times I did, but most of the time it was turned down. But there should be some mention in there for people in the general public, out there, a different procedure, or at least well-noted procedure for them to follow, 2 or 3 stages to come before council for a discussion item, not necessarily an action vote. Action vote would come later with the consensus of council if they would like to act on it. Something to that effect. If that could be in it, I think that would benefit the character of the whole document, what you put together. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, that would be the whole idea behind public comment, would be to raise an issue in your 2 minutes, say, I would really like council to put this on the agenda, and if they need materials, or I'll submit materials to support it, whatever that is, and that would then proverbially bounce the ball into council's court on whether to take that up.
Thank you, Tim. Councilmember Kivel.
I would like you to try to pull together as many of the threads that you know are positions that we enjoy already to try to create that single document. I think that's a great idea.
Mr. Mayor, yeah, we're certainly not going to try and change what you're doing. We're going to try and match up with the things that you are currently doing, and then say you may want to add this as an additional tool or something to that effect.
But prior resolutions, threads that are in the charter, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think that's a great way to start at least.
Councilmember Kurtzwell.
I would suggest that everybody on council, and if it's agreeable with you, Tim, if during the next month or 2 months or whatever, there isn't a real emergency on this, that we sit down and go over the outline that's been provided, and call you and spend 5 or 10 minutes on the phone and say, these are the issues that are really important to me. And after you talk to 5 or 6 or 7 of us, if you see a consensus beginning to form, then that might provide some additional direction. But at least, I would encourage council to take an active role in at least sort of not using time up tonight, but contacting you, as long as we're reasonable and we don't take half hour, 45 minutes. Yes.
Mr. Mayor? Do all of you, if I can ask a couple of questions, you've been provided a number of sample sets of rules. Do you all still have those, or do you need them?
I do.
One of the things that would be helpful would be to identify any sets of rules that you like, or in some manner identify the provisions in any of those that you like and would like to see worked into, because we're not going to recreate the wheel here. We're going to certainly work with what has worked in other communities, what are used in other communities, and try and fit it into what works for South Lyon. So if that's another way to skin that cat, so to speak.
Yeah. No, and I second Councilmember Kurtzwell on if something comes up or even, something pops in your head that we haven't thought of, definitely please reach out to Tim and Matt and let them know what's on your mind. Does anyone have anything else on this?
Mr. Mayor? So,
Councilmember Kennedy?
thank you. So where do we stand? Are we going to put the burden on each of the council members, rely on them to go back into their archives, find the copies that were provided previously, and then feed back to Tim within a given time frame as to what they find pertinent, what they find, that doesn't apply? Or are we going to rely on Tim and Matt to come back with a straw man that will build on? So, I mean, we've talked about going a couple of different ways. If we don't put a time frame on something, it's obviously of no importance to anybody.
Right.
So I think we need to make a decision on how we exactly want to proceed and what the timing is going to be on it.
I'm more inclined to have them work something up and we can end up building off of that.
I have no problem with that either.
They have exposure to a lot of communities' versions of the way they operate, and I think that makes sense.
And with to build on that, Councilman Kibble, I mean, Attorney Wilhelm has been at that table for an extended period of time. He knows what parts we use.
Yep.
He knows what works well, and he can certainly make those recommendations and compile that information.
Sure. Well, and Matt, with the few threads that we had on that discussion, he ended up putting together what I thought was a great synopsis of everything that we had spoke to. So I think that they can do the same thing with this to get it moving in the right direction at the very least, rather than waiting for us to react to something.
Right.
If I could suggest, probably a monthly status update, just put it on the agenda for some type of update. We'll do it every other meeting to make sure that we're staying on top of it and moving forward.
All right.
Sounds constructive.
Councilmember Walton, do you have something? Okay. All right, so we don't need to make any action on this. We can just move forward, correct? So we'll move on to new business. Number 1, consider approval of budget amendments. The recommendation on this new business is to approve the proposed amendments. We do have Lori Mosier in the audience tonight, if anyone has any questions for Lori. Or
Just real quick, Councilmember Kennedy stopped by my office on Friday and pointed out a couple errors, so I fixed them. These are the spreads, if you want to pass them down. Great, please, thank you. I don't know if anybody had any questions, but basically these are just year-end adjustments to get us as close to actual as possible. Most of the changes were done in general fund. And I think the good news is, even though the appropriation increased for expenditures, so did the revenues. And if I did this good enough, I don't know if I did, but I think we're going to be putting about roughly $140,000 to $147,000 back into fund balance this year. But that's based only if I don't get any surprise expenditures coming in at the last minute. So I don't know if you had any questions.
Councilmember Kurtzwell?
How many of these amendments to the budget could have been done? Because we have a policy that amendments to the budget should come through at least at a minimum every quarter.
They probably could have been a few that came in, but if you recall when we did the new budget for next year, I went through and I recalculated all the new fund balances off the audit. So we did that amendment, and then once I got caught up with things in the office, I went back and started trying to go to actual. Now, we did have a couple of things that came up in the middle of the year that, as we approved those expenditures for certain things, like the one that comes to mind, and we did amend it, but the North Lafayette sanitary sewer main break that we had, we knew then that we were going to have more expenses as we got that project approved. I would like to see amendments go with those as they come to council for approval, rather than trying to play catch-up at the end of a quarter. Every time we know something new is coming up that's going to affect our bottom line, we should be doing amendments when we get that approval for the new project.
But I would agree with you. I would absolutely agree with you on that, because it's difficult for me to go ahead and approve something that that I hear there's going to be a budget amendment coming for that, because that tells me that I've approved something without the budget actually being in place for that actual approval. So I'm giving my consent ahead of time. That's what I'm doing. So I'm voting and saying, yes, I will approve an expenditure for $300,000, so go ahead tomorrow and spend it, but I'm not going to amend the budget for another 60 days. I have a problem timing my vote off like that. I want to be able to time my vote on an expenditure item to what is existing in that line item at the time I make that vote.
Okay.
But, quarterly helps, but if you want to up the table and do that as these large expenditures are coming through, I think it's a far more financially fiscal way of managing the budget, is getting those budget amendments in, particularly when you know they're large items and you have to do transfers.
Right.
So, did you have to do any transfers in this? Okay. I
No.
didn't see any, but I wanted to just ask, maybe I missed something. I mean, I don't know. I looked at it.
No, actually what I did is, you'll notice some of the revenues went up, some of the revenues
noticed
went
that,
down.
yeah.
Some of the expenditures went up, some went down. I tried not to increase the appropriation, but there wasn't any way to do that because of the big payout we just had.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened in May, so I, couldn't do anything about that beforehand.
Okay.
But as far as transfers, no, there were no transfer changes.
Okay. Okay. Once again, I am going to continue to advocate for a full-time financial director for the city.
Okay.
I think that an individual who is on top of this budget 7 days a week or 5 days a week, I do want to say, Laura, you have been absolutely phenomenal. Anytime I've emailed you, I tend to get the emails late at night on weekends, and I always say, don't answer till Monday or Tuesday. You have been phenomenal, and I think that this is probably an additional adjustment, managerial adjustment the city needs to think about, is getting somebody managing the budget full-time, because I will tell you, it has made a difference. It has really made a difference this year. I want to thank you for your hard work.
Well, thank you.
Councilmember Kennedy?
Lori and I already discussed this a little bit, and again, this is my first go with the budget here, but when we look at, the money that's left at the end of the fiscal year, are there controls that are there that just prevent spending the money just because it's left over
No.
in those departments?
No,
So-
and that's something I would like to see council address, maybe do a policy. Cut off the second week of June. If it's not an operating expenditure, you don't get to spend it.
If you
A lot
didn't
of-
know you needed it up till then,
Well, if you needed it and you budgeted for it, you probably should have purchased it earlier in the year. You
Absolutely.
don't wait till the end of June to do that. I would like to see some kind of policy put into place to where we don't spend it down. People think they're losing money, but you're not really losing it. It's going back into fund balance to be used at a different time, and perhaps for a different purpose.
right?
Yeah, it is a reprioritization of your upcoming funds. So, I agree with that. But I do like the idea that spending of real consequence, I think, should be amended as quickly as we can. When you had the little nickel and dime things, $300 here and $200 there,
Right.
I'm not sweating those except for the quarterly thing. But when it's a real consequential expenditure, we should do it with the approval. I agree.
Councilmember Kurtzwell?
I would also like to commend you on your suggestion of a budget policy. I think we have several budget policies that the city has ignored. The city has not taken the initiative to do for whatever reason. Some of it rests with council. They had an opportunity to begin working on a general fund balance policy, which most communities now have in place, except for the city of South Lyon. But these are the kinds of things that a full-time financial director could be working on and bringing to the table, get you to some really sophisticated municipal financing seminars, get you in here doing some drafting of policies, and networking with other financial directors. I mean, I had a wonderful conversation probably about a year ago with the financial director in Durango, Colorado. She was phenomenal, and I was calling her specifically about an issue that had arisen here in the city of South Lyon. Durango had the answer. City of South Lyon wasn't really interested in solving the problem. So there are many budgetary issues that I think we could be working on this next year. And I think if we had someone full-time that did nothing but manage the budget, I think that would be a tremendous asset to the city. And I think the city would be moving forward with a far more professional approach to fiscally managing issues rather than reacting, but actually being a little bit more deliberative about how we handle the finances. But good suggestion, excellent suggestion.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have anything for Lori? I want to thank you, too, for all your hard work, Lori.
Thank you.
Thank you for being
very
here.
much.
We need the motion.
Yes, we do.
I'll make the motion that we approve the proposed amendments.
I'll support.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. On to new business number 2. Consider approval of removal/replacement of McCaddy Park playground equipment. The recommendation is to approve removal, replacement of the play structure.
I'll make a motion. We approve the removal of the play structure in McCaddy Park and is necessitated by state recommendations.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes.
That's how this is supposed to go.
New business
Thank
number
you for being
3.
here.
Consider approval of Blues, Brews, and Brats. Recommendation is to approve this request.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Andrea Meyer, Kensington Valley Chamber of Commerce, 58,000 Grand River Avenue, Lyon Township. I'm here for, you probably have in front of you, the August 4th application for our Blues, Brews, and Brats that we'll do every year here in the Whipple Street lot. No changes this year from prior years. It's a great event. I wore my blues outfit. Getting the vibe. But it's a great event, and we love having it there, and it's a perfect, compact location, and Chief works great with us, and we hope to work with them again this year. So,
Chief, do you have any comments?
Once again, no significant changes. Police Department will cooperate with the event. Hope to make it very successful, and we recommend approval.
Does anyone else have anything?
Is that how Tim feels? Are you comfy with all the sign-offs and stuff?
I did look through them. They are acceptable.
Okay.
Great.
I make a motion that we approve the Whipple Street parking lot for the Kensington Valley Chamber of Commerce Blues, Brews, and Brats event to be set up beginning at 7 a.m. on August 3rd and cleanup to be completed by 12 p.m. on August 16th, 2018.
I'll second.
I believe, Councilmember Walton, did you second that?
I did, but that's okay, it doesn't matter.
That's all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Thank you so much.
thank you.
Looking forward to it.
Seeing you there, yeah.
New business number 4, consider approval of banner policy for light pole and over-the-road banners. I'm excited to hear about this.
Well, last November, we had the poles installed after finding a little bit of money in the DDA's budget and ordered them, and they were put up. Thank you for your approval then, and the Road Commission of Oakland County approved it. So at our June 14th DDA board meeting, the DDA had been asking about these guidelines for a few months, and so we finally approved them at the DDA level. For both the existing street lamps throughout town, there are about 80 of those. Only 40 of those have arms. And so the policy would govern the street lights as well as the one over-the-road banner on North Lafayette. So we modeled this after communities on the East Coast, Milford and Farmington. In fact, I just had another meeting, had several meetings with staff. Over the past 2 weeks, I've met with Fire Chief, DPW, and Police Chief I had a meeting in Milford last week regarding hardware. So we think we're ready to order hardware if we get this approved. So I think it's good for the community. I think it's good for the individual groups. It's not for private individuals or private business. It's for civic organizations, city, DDA, and the schools.
Great. Is anyone, Councilmember Kibble?
The only thing that I saw that seemed to deviate from our personal discussion was the on page 2, the materials. It speaks to the vinyl with the slashes in there. You had talked about just having it solely relegated to the mesh banners.
Yes. After I gave this to Lloyd for the packet, we met Friday, actually Thursday afternoon or Friday, I forget, with Milford, and she strongly suggested, Milford's DDA director, that we only go with the mesh because of wind load,
Right.
and one spec for everybody, and I totally agree. So we would have to alter that, correct that, to remove the vinyl.
I got a question.
Oh, vinyl, excuse me, vinyl for over the road.
That's correct.
Vinyl is fine for the lampposts.
Correct.
Councilmember Richards?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bob, would a 501c3 be the only type of organization connected with a school or city? For instance, Pumpkin Fest is best of my knowledge, is not a 501c3.
I think they are.
They are?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think they make a profit. I thought they made a profit.
Well, they can make a profit. A nonprofit can make a profit, but the profits have to go back into the event.
Okay, well, this,
Or they can give them to charitable causes and other groups.
okay, well, okay, I don't know. Some things over the past have been sponsored by Kiwanis, okay, and used to be, the Masons used to be very active in this town, okay?
Those civic groups would qualify.
Okay, what about, then the churches also? Some of the churches, if they want to have a banquet or something, or a celebration of their historical registry? The churches, I'm saying.
We didn't specifically, I didn't see churches specifically mentioned in any of the information from other cities. I think most cities shy away from that.
Okay, all right, I'm just, sometimes the church will have a 100-year anniversary or 150-year
We
anniversary.
might have a consideration. I mean, I think we could all probably bring it to council, a request, and have a reasonable common sense review.
Okay, understood.
Someone celebrating an occasion.
Common sense is not very common anymore.
Second question, real quick here. Please refresh my memory, I mean, you may have addressed it, but the over-the-road banners are only allowed on North Lafayette Street. Is that because of the wind or the angle of the sun?
No, that's the only place where we have the 2 banner poles that were installed last November. That's the only location available.
Oh, you can't attach it to the side of the wall of the buildings then? I thought it
No,
was...
we don't have any locations available.
Oh, okay.
These
all
are
right.
2, for lack of a better term, 2 large telephone poles that are 28 feet out of the ground. They were specifically placed there, directly across from one of them.
Okay, all right, understood.
Does anyone else have anything for Mr. Donahue? Councilmember Friesian?
I'll make the motion. I make the motion to approve the City of South Lyon banner policy for light pole and over-the-road banners.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Hold on.
Oh.
Modifying 5B, the mesh
So,
banner for the posts.
there you go.
Mesh only for the
Yes.
over-the-road, yes.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
You amended it, right?
Thank you, Bob.
Thank
Motion
you very
passes.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
New business number 5 this evening, consider approval of charitable gaming license for South Lyon High School cheer boosters. The recommendation is to approve the proposed local governing body resolution for charitable gaming license.
Mr. Mayor, one comment.
Chief Collins, please.
There is one very slight deviation from the state law in the cheer boosters bylaws, and that deviation is that unlike the state law that says their bylaws have to contain a provision that all assets, real property, and personal property shall revert to the benefit of the local governmental subdivision that granted the resolution upon dissolution of the organization. Their bylaws say that upon dissolution, that their assets and funds could go to another 501c3. I don't have an issue with that. I'm simply pointing out the small discrepancy for council's information.
Thank you. Councilmember Kurtzwell.
That language in Article 10 is language that is found, that is required by the IRS. So that's why there's a discrepancy, because their bylaws are conforming to what they had to submit to the IRS. The IRS requires Article 10 to be in their Articles of Incorporation.
Mr. Mayor.
Chief
And
Counsel.
what I was citing was state law.
Thank you.
Does it make it mandatory?
It's cited by the Gaming Commission, Mr. Mayor, as, I'll let it go at that.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything? Oh, Councilmember Kurtzwell.
Yeah, I move to approve the local governing body resolution for charitable gaming licenses recognizing South Lyon High School Cheer Boosters as a nonprofit organization in the community for the purpose of obtaining charitable gaming licenses.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
Just don't dissolve, it's not an issue.
It's not going to happen.
Well, it says nonprofit organization, so that's what the IRS gave you status. That's a true statement.
New business number 6 this evening, consider approval of audit agreement with Plant Moran. The recommendation on this new business item is to approve the agreement from Plant Moran to audit the city's financial statements from the 2017-2018 fiscal year.
Up until 4 days from now.
Councilmember Kurtzwell.
I move to approve the agreement from Plant Moran to audit the city's financial statements for the 2017-2018 fiscal year in an amount not to exceed $61,000.
I'll support. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. At this point, we'll move on to the budget this evening. Councilmember Kurtzwell?
I just had one quick question. When Patrick was hired into the city, did you hire Patrick? Was he somebody you hired?
Mr. Mayor,
Oh, yes. Sorry, Chief
care
Counsel.
for me to
Yes.
ask that question?
What's that?
Care for me to answer that question?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I did hire Patrick.
What are you paying him an hour? I'm just curious. What is he being paid an hour?
From what I understand, it's $20 an hour. Give or take.
Is he performing a function or a duty different than what Megan performed?
I would have to ask interim city manager Chief Collins to help me with a little bit more feedback on that.
He's performing some slightly different functions. He has vastly different qualifications.
Thank you.
Just want to bring it to council's attention that when Megan was here, she was paid roughly $14.72, and the male is now being paid $20 in less than a couple months. I haven't really received any information indicating that he had that much difference in terms of qualifications to be paid almost $3.50 more than the female that held that position. They perform the same job, same duties, same responsibilities. Every person brings a different level of experience, but that's a pretty big jump in pay. Additionally, when there was an individual in City Hall by the name of Joan who asked for a simple dollar raise, and she was turned down. So I am questioning some of your labor practices, and I was not pleased to hear that the difference was that amount. It's a pretty large jump, but it is what it is.
Chief Collins?
Just a point of clarification, Mr. Mayor. The raise for Joan would have been, and I don't have the figures in front of me because I was not asked any of these questions ahead of time so that I could be prepared. Apparently, the method is to grandstand and ambush. But to the best of my recollection, the difference that Joan wanted was not $1. The difference was much closer to $3.
Thank you. Does anyone, Mr. Willem?
I just want to add a point. I am not involved in any of the hiring decisions, but from my perspective, the planning director position, zoning administrator, has been difficult to keep filled. It's been a rotating door, not a criticism of anybody, but there may have been an evaluation that the pay needed to be increased in order to get the quality to get somebody to fill the position.
Councilmember Kurtzwell.
I think if that's the case, and I have spoken about increasing labor costs before, particularly in the case of Mike Bovin, where I didn't feel that his pay was at market. I think that those are sort of decisions that probably should have come to council, given that this is a fairly large race, and dealing particularly with the sensitive facts of gender in this case. I am an individual who has worked very hard her whole life, and I have competed with respect to various inequalities with respect to pay, and I'm very astute and extremely sensitive when I see these kinds of large gaps between the payment of men and women performing basically the same job. So I felt it was duly appropriate to bring forward, and if the interim city manager finds it grandstanding, that's his problem. It should have been an issue that should have been brought before council. Council should have looked at the issue, looked at the job description, and council should have had a deliberative conversation on whether that position should have been raised in order to avoid any impropriety or interference of pay inequity. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Kivel.
I don't think that it's taking a very strong path to second guess every decision that the city manager is making about everything. The candidate or the person that had been in that job had taken a number of opportunities to try to get out of here to do something else that she wanted to do, which wasn't that job. She wanted to be in preservation. And so, I mean, it's a little bit of an artificial environment to say that they're parallel. So, but the idea of us second guessing every decision for hiring and firing that's a difficult way to go.
Does anyone else have anything on the budget this evening? All right, we'll move forward to the manager's report. Chief Collins, please.
Yes, one item I hadn't planned on talking about, but I just want to bring it up for the public's information because it wasn't discussed as part of the playground equipment replacement that council passed. Although it was in the documents, that removal and replacement will necessitate the closure of the playground for a week, and that is currently planned for Monday, July 9th through Monday, July 16th.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I got a question.
Oh, hang on. Councilmember Parisian?
Are we going to place that on our website, place it on the Facebook pages? I want to make sure, because it's still summertime.
Yeah, possibly even, sorry to chip in, but
Sure.
maybe even the
That's
digitals.
why I was starting now with the public announcement
Excellent.
for cable.
You're on
But
it. Thank you.
we'll do the other notifications also.
Thank you.
Councilmember Richards, you had something?
Yes, Mr. Collins, okay. I spend quite a bit of time in McCaddy Park, and we've talked about it a number of times. People are asking me, well, what part of the playground equipment is going to be taken out, or is it going to all be sort of closed down or fenced off and just one part removed, or is anybody going to hang on some signs that say play on this at your own risk or whatever, because it's going to be some time. We approved it tonight, but it's going to be some time before it's actually taken out. Is it safe to play on the designated piece? Because there's three major sections there.
I was not advised that it was currently unsafe, just that for liability reasons, it needed to be removed and replaced.
Okay. No, okay, we'll rephrase that, but what do we tell the public? Are we going to put a sign out there telling them what's happening, or are we going to close
We're going
it
to
off?
totally close the playground once we begin the work. And then they won't be able to use any of the items that are within the closed-off area, because there will also be DPW and construction type equipment within that closed-off area.
That'll include the swings and the little,
I'm not sure that it will include the area of the swings, just the area that they're working on.
Oh, okay.
And will have to be
on
closed.
the east side of the bike path then. Yeah, okay. Yeah, all right, just worth asking, worth talking about.
Sure.
Chief, did you have anything else in the manager's report?
I have
Okay.
a few things. One of our police cadets, Cadet John Lachance, resigned from the police department to accept a full-time position with the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Department, so congratulations to Deputy Lachance. He has been replaced with a female cadet, Summer Rosenthal. She's his replacement. She was sworn in at City Hall on Thursday, June 21st. On the garbage and yard waste front, there have been some issues lately. Some citizens have not been real happy with late collections or missed collections. I contacted Sam Caramango of GFL regarding recent problems with the late and missed garbage, recyclable, and yard waste collections. Mr. Caramango was apologetic and cited equipment and personnel issues as contributing causes. Mr. Caramango was advised that excuses are unacceptable, and if significant service problems continue, the city may invoke the liquidated damages clause of the contract with GFL. That's section 1.8 of our contract with them, whereby GFL would be penalized $100 for each occurrence of specified late or missed collections. So I think I have Mr. Caramango's attention, and hopefully we will see an improvement in service. Another issue that's been of concern to our residents has been the Comcast cable project in Trotters Point. I met with two construction supervisors from Comcast Cable regarding recent damage to a gas line and a water line in Trotters Point. Those were separate incidents. The lines were damaged by contractors working on Comcast cable installations. I also consulted with City Attorney Wilhelm regarding cost recovery for the emergency response and repairs, as well as Comcast access rights to the private property. City Attorney Wilhelm will be researching those matters further, and we will adjust appropriately. And that's it.
All right, thank you very much. Does anyone have anything for Chief Collins?
Yeah, I would like to
Councilman
ask, are those guys using misdig, or are they just kind of throwing a shovel in the ground, see what happens?
The utilities were properly marked.
Huh.
The gas line was a service line to an individual home. It was struck with a hand shovel and pierced and caused a leak.
Well, sadly, I've had that happen to me too,
The,
so
the water service lead was a much bigger deal.
that's a different story. Yeah.
Required 2 days on overtime of DPW as well as equipment to find the line and repair it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, at this time, we will open up for our second public comment this evening. No one coming forward. We'll move forward to council comments. Councilmember Richards, why don't you get us started tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have too many comments tonight, but I would like to make mention of the improvement in the downtown, which Bob has gone right now, has mentioned a number of times about the building where it's being resurfaced up there, owned by Mr. Rowe, a resident of Northville. I've taken pictures up there, and I've spoken to the contractor, and he's fully assured me that that's the oldest building in town, and my historical projections were in error. I made a mistake, and when I make a mistake, I correct myself, okay, and say I was wrong. Bob's Barber Shop is not the oldest building on that side of the street. The one he's working on was older, and we got samples of the bricks, okay, and different things, and he's going to write it up for me. We're going to have it in a record for the Historical Society. Okay, another correction I will make. I told a few people there was a wedding Saturday over here at the park in the chapel. Boy, was I wrong, okay? It was a non-denominational special baptism of an infant by two different clerics, okay? Something special, and which we made arrangements for. Anyway, another example of when I say something wrong, I want to make sure I correct myself, and I'm sorry. An honest mistake. Other than that, I could talk about a few other things, but I'll pass it on, okay?
All right, thank you, Councilmember Richards. Councilmember Kennedy?
Just want to touch on a couple of things that took place over the past week or so. First, on June 20th, want to compliment the Salem South Lyon District Library on their Touch a Truck event. They had well over 150 kids there with their parents. I also want to recognize Don Olson, the library director, as well as Sarah Swiderski, who was instrumental in coordinating getting all the equipment there, as well as other members of the library for organizing and conducting that event. I'd like to thank our Water and Wastewater Department for providing the front-end loader, for Lieutenant Moynihan and Firefighter Noshel for representing the South Lyon Fire Department, Susan Martin for representing the Wellhead Protection Program, and Sergeant Baker for representing the South Lyon Police Department. Also, obviously, want to thank Chief Collins and Chief Vogel for allowing those individuals to participate in that event. I mean, everybody had a great time, and I think Ron Beeson had probably the longest line for the front-end loader. I'm probably sure that the horn needs to be replaced at this point. I also want to recognize the effort on the part of the Chamber of Commerce for their networking breakfast that took place on Friday. That was hosted by the Lemon Tree, the Coral Sash, and JR Financial. They had well over 30 to 35 businesses there at the Olmsted building in downtown South Lyon. Had a great turnout, good networking opportunity for a number of businesses from our general area. I'd also like to compliment and congratulate Martin's Hardware on celebrating their 50th year in business on Saturday. The weather cooperated. It was a great turnout for the event. And also want to recognize Ed Brown for bringing back those fabulous Coney dogs to help with the celebration. I think both Martin's Hardware and Brown's have long been institutions in our community and should be recognized as such. Finally, I just want to remind everybody about the Lake Street Cruising that'll take place this Wednesday, and the concerts in the park coming up this Friday, which is going to be Mustard's Retreat, and next Friday, which will be Creole du Nord, starting at 7 o'clock. And lastly, starting July 1st, the residents of the city of South Lyon will be eligible to receive 64-gallon recycling cards from GFL. The website, the link to the website should be active by then. From the home page on the city's website, that will take you to a form to be filled out online with GFL. You'll receive a confirming email as a result of that, and then GFL will deliver that cart to the residents at no charge. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember Kennedy. Great update there on the GFL thing at the end as well. Councilmember Walton?
Thank you. I just want to also say Martin's Hardware 50th anniversary party was a great time. I was able to go with Ryan Laris, citizen number 1 of South Lyon. We had a good time. I brought my hat tonight to, make sure that everybody knew. They had some great giveaways, and I congratulate the people, the winners of their drawings that they had. I believe there was a Yeti cooler and something else. Unfortunately, I didn't win, but that's okay. Also want to say congratulations to Witch's Hat Brewing Company, who had another successful fundraiser this past Father's Day. They did the Sparrow Freedom Project. They raised over $2,000. They also raised some money for the Justin Lee funeral expenses and the Juvenile Diabetes Research Fund. So again, they put on a really nice event for everybody. And thank you to the South Lyon Fire Department for saving the 7 ducklings earlier this week. I know our wildlife is a big thing for everyone around, so we do a great job, and have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, Councilmember Walton. Councilmember Parisian?
I wanted to go ahead and state, as I always do, we need volunteers. So again, if you know anyone in the community who's interested, we have our Board of Ethics, Planning Commission, Parks and Rec. We have the Historical Society. They were just here last meeting stating that they really desperately need help, especially with their gardening. Keep in mind that our McCaddy Park is a gem in South Lyon, so we need help keeping the flower beds looking good, especially for the weddings and other events that are coming up, family reunions in the park. So if you know anyone, spread the word. If there's any interest at all, be sure to check out the website, apply, and we'll get those boards filled. Cultural arts as well. And then I also want to say congratulations and best of luck to Deputy LaChance, and welcome to summer as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Kurtzwell?
Yes, I have a couple of interesting comments. The first one is I've spent the last week and a half traveling outside of the state of Michigan, and it had political issues or reasons, and so I had an opportunity to meet with voters in the Midwest and sort of ascertain, what are the issues that are bubbling with respect to them. Clearly, everybody knows that the number one bubble issue is clearly immigration, but the one that is bubbling beneath the surface that hasn't quite received a lot of attention is the downdraft that appears to be developing from our America's Dirty Cop, which is Jim Comey, in terms of how his conduct and the conduct of some of his FBI agents is beginning to affect credibility with respect to local municipalities in terms of their law enforcement. I did have an opportunity to speak with many individuals who had stories to tell about bias in their law enforcement, of how this was affecting their opinion, and questioning some decisions that clearly were made in their communities, and they provided newspaper articles, etc. So I am going to pass off to those individuals in law enforcement that I respect and am familiar with, to make sure that they are engaging in conduct that is bias-free, that their law enforcement officers do not have a bias with respect to an outcome of whether it's a political item, whether it's an agenda item, is that the professional discipline, as they are calling it, must be maintained at all times, and encourage law enforcement to engage in periodic training to ensure that professional bias is maintained at all times and that law enforcement stays out of the political process. So that is the message that I bring back from a week and a half of traveling and meeting with individuals, and I think it probably has a lot of merit. Next, to address an issue that came up earlier in the meeting regarding a letter that I drafted on March 5th, is there was nothing libelous in it at all, and to the interim city manager, I'm not going to allow you to throw the city attorney under the bus. It isn't going to happen on my watch. Tim expressed an opinion. You're the final decision maker. And if you had a problem with not distributing that letter to the council and giving council an opportunity to make up their own decision, you could have contacted me, and you could have contacted the two lawyers that were on the letter that reviewed it before it came over to city council. And your impression of whatever you felt was wrong with it would have been cleared up. Probably what you didn't like is that it wasn't flattering to you, it wasn't flattering you and your conduct in certain issues related to the selection of a city council member. Next, I would like to say that I'm going to be working the Four Seasons Garden Club. They are hosting their very well-attended and popular garden walk on Saturday, July 14th. I am a member of the club. I do have a garden that I work at very tediously, and I'm also working on a major landscape garden here in the community. Hopefully that garden will be ready for a garden walk showing in about 4 years. We are about 50 to 60% the way through that project. I have a great garden that I'm going to be sitting at on July 14th. I can hardly wait to see this garden. It is located in downtown South Lyon. I have viewed this home from the road for 20 years now, and I can't believe that I was selected to come to this house and sit and greet the garden visitors who are going to be attending the garden walk. So I don't want to say anything about it. I've seen the plans of the backyard garden. I'm probably going to go over early and ask for a private tour. But I am so excited about this downtown South Lyon home that is going to be on the South Lyon Garden Walk. You can buy your tickets at the Salem South Lyon Library the day of the event. Also, I would like to thank all the individuals in our community that are volunteering. We have great volunteers, so with the cheerleaders, with boosters, with Kiwanis, with Rotary. We have so many organizations in the city of South Lyon. There are many, many opportunities to volunteer your time. And thank you for all of you that are stepping up and volunteering. You're just making a difference in the community. We love all of our volunteers. And last, I would like to say that I attended the golf outing for the Kensington Valley, and there was a very interesting gentleman there. The mayor of the hotel was there. Everybody knows who I'm talking about. It's Taylor. He ran for mayor. We all went to the hotel and voted for Taylor. It was at the hotel, of course. And he was at the golf outing event, and he was actually he was the show. He's an absolutely incredible individual, and I want to thank Corey at the hotel for hiring some absolutely incredible talent down there. Not only do they have good food like the crab biscuit soup, but they also have just great employees with great personalities. And if you haven't met Tyler yet, you have to meet Tyler. So good night, everybody. Thank you for watching. Thank you for inviting all of us into your home this evening, and we'll see you at the next city council meeting. Thank you. Good night. Have a good week.
Thank you, Councilmember Kurtzwell. Councilmember Kivel?
I enjoyed getting out to help celebrate some local businesses last week, starting Thursday at Bufano Eye Care for their 20th anniversary. So that was kind of nice, and walking through the downtown, it was nicely populated down there that night. That was terrific. Friday night started with the concert in the park, ending with the 2-year anniversary of the fire at the hotel, where they had dishes and specials with the fire theme. Some drinks and some little food items. It was kind of an interesting spin on a pretty tragic event there, so everybody seemed to have fun from that. And of course, on Saturday, Martin's Hardware celebrated 50 years of serving the needs of this area's fixers, hobbyists, painters, and tradesmen with a smile and their helpful knowledge. Ed Brown's crew provided hot dogs and conies. Mickey Stanley from the World Series winning 68 Tigers was there signing autographs, so that was really nice. All in all, an entertaining time, topped off with the excitement of walking downtown and seeing the progress at the 2 facade programs that are projects that are taking place on Lake and Lafayette. So good things are happening in South Lyon, so just stay tuned. Bigger and better things are yet to come, so thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you. I'll keep this brief too. I was, of course, at Martin's 50th anniversary, and the turnout was great. The weather held off for everyone. It was jamming over there. In fact, they may have even caused a little fender bender while we were there. But WHMI was out there. It was a busy and great event. Ed Brown, like you guys all said, was out there. It was very cool, and at times was reminding me of old South Lyon, even when I was running around there, almost like I was a kid. So it was great to see everyone out there. Congratulations to the Martin family and being in business for 50 years and being a part of this community for just as long. So on that note, we'll look to move to a closed session. And Tim, I'll look for your assistance here.
Pat Eseltine from Johnson Rosati is here. We'd be looking for a motion to go into closed session under Section 8C of the Open Meetings Act to discuss strategy and negotiations for collective bargaining with the IUOE Local 324.
Can we get a break?
So
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
A second.
All in favor?
It says a roll call.
Sorry, roll call. I apologize.
No, we get caught every time.
I know. I did. Can I get a? Thank you, Lisa.
Kivel?
Yes.
Frezia?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Walton?
No.
Kurzweil?
No.
Elstaff?
Yes. And are we going to move to one of the conference rooms?
It's your pleasure, whatever.
Well,
you'd
I
like
think
to do.
we should, just because we're having technical difficulties where if we stop the tape, we can't then get the filming of
Sure.
any action we may make. So I would suggest that we do that, and then at that time, Councilmember Richards, if you'd like a quick break, go ahead.
Chief. This is a student chief. You know what this is regarding?
Okay.
What I know, Brock.
I don't know. I just was distributed to all the council.
I believe it came to the mayor. I have no knowledge of it.
Can you explain this guy?
Yeah, I can. I received a letter this afternoon in my mayor's mailbox. So I made a copy of it for all the council members. As you can see, it's addressed to the city manager, myself, and the council.
Okay.
Well, right, so if you get the,
Yeah.
So I had talked to
Somebody's got a birthday
Yes,
blood.
he just,
Yeah.
so I just, when I get a letter like this, it's my responsibility.
No,
to
I
share
agree.
it. So-
No, you know, I've never said I work for the city. I don't, and I know I have your blessing, so I'm not worried about it. It's just somebody's got a birthday butt.
Yeah, so I.
You know what?
I'm just-
Probably porcupine.
Right, and like I said, I would just have to do.
No, I know. I appreciate it.
She might, but I have more. No, I have more.
No, I get it. I get it. No,
Nope.
You had to. It's your job. It's, you know, as they say, shitty deal. But
No, I got you, and I know you mean well.
hey, do you have a PC that can handle gaming?
I do not.
You can get one. They have came out with Jurassic World Evolution. I was up at 4 in the morning playing last night. I couldn't stop. It was so addicting. You build your own park, and then and the dinosaurs. I mean, they look real. It's just all watch the YouTube videos of it. It's only.
There's some good ones still out there, okay?
The perception is that it's not.
Actually, that's very true. The perception is politicians, too. We're all getting it.
Always perception is reality with the beginning of the dumbing down of America. Perception is just that, perception.
America became dumber when the Kardashians came on. And not Robert Kardashian, because he was an attorney.
hit the floor then.
We
You're
did hit the
absolutely
floor.
right.
That's when America hit its downfall, was with the Kardashians.
Closest airport is Lyon.
Little tiny airport.
All set.
I move we're back in session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Kurtzwell.
I have a motion. I have a motion to approve the city's labor attorney, Patrick Asseltine, to continue negotiations on the collective bargaining agreement between the city of South Lyon and IUOE Local 324.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
Mr. Mayor, I have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
Nice meeting